What's going on, guys? Welcome to the video. So if you thought UK politicians colluding with the EU was over, now the Boris deal has been done, then you was wrong. It seems the so-called leaders of the puppet parliaments in Scotland and Wales decided to get in on undermining the UK government's position in international negotiations because these traitors, it seems, are above the law. You may remember we had the Lib Dem leader Jo Swinson and her lackey Tom Brake go over to the EU for secret talks aimed at stopping Brexit, not long after Verhofstadt called for an EU empire at the Lib Dem party conference. Then, just last week, Dominic Grieve, Ian Blackford, Caroline Lucas and others posed for pictures in the Eurostar terminal before heading off to Brussels for secret talks aimed at stopping Brexit, likely finalising details on the Letwin-Reckon amendment that passed through Parliament on Saturday. Well, today, following on from Boris Johnson sending the Benac's forced extension letters unsigned, along with his own letter pointing out the extension request is from Parliament, not him or his government, and stating his government will never support a Brexit extension. The SNP leader Nicola Sturgeon and Welsh First Minister Mark Drakeford decided to write a letter to Donald Tusk begging for an extension so they can scrutinise the Boris Johnson deal for months, because I guess they might lack the mental capacity to do it in the same time frame the UK Parliament can do it in. I really don't understand why they need months to look over it when Parliament plans to do it in a few days. To be honest, I expect it's nothing to do with their intellect and more to do with their anti-democratic agenda aimed at ignoring the 2016 EU referendum, which the SNP have form on, considering they ignored the results of the 2014 Scottish referendum, so maybe we should not be surprised by this at all. Then, let's not forget, while Scotland voted to remain, more people voted to leave the EU in Scotland during the 2016 referendum than voted for the SNP in the 2017 general election, which proves to everyone but Nicola Sturgeon and Ian Blackford the SNP do not speak for Scotland. Leaving the EU has more of a mandate in Scotland than the SNP, so she really needs to pipe down, but this is the SNP we're talking about. They're absolutely full of shit, and always have been. So let's check out what these puppet leaders had to say in their grovelling letter to Donald Musk. I love how they started with His Excellency. Whose Excellency is he? Ridiculous. Dear President Tusk, we are writing subsequent to the agreement reached between the UK government and the European Union on the 17th of October and proceedings in the UK Parliament on 19th of October. The Prime Minister has now sent you a letter to request an extension to the Article 50 process from the European Council, as he is required to do by law in the EU. Withdrawal Number 2 Act 2019, the Ben Act or Surrender Act. We are writing to support that request for an extension so that there is no risk of a UK exit before a withdrawal agreement has been ratified by both the EU and UK. Our joint view is that the ultimate result of the Westminster parliamentary process should be a referendum on EU membership. Of course you would say that. But in any event, it is also essential to ensure that there is sufficient time for proper scrutiny over the withdrawal agreement bill. Because like I said, they need months or years. They can't do it in a few days like everybody else. I wonder what the reasons are. As you are aware, the withdrawal agreement cannot come into effect before the UK Parliament has passed the legislation allowing UK ratification. We understand that the withdrawal agreement bill will be introduced in the House of Commons today. This bill will be among the most important pieces of legislation ever considered by the UK Parliament, with far-reaching implications for the whole of the United Kingdom and indeed the European Union. No, I'm sure there's more important pieces of legislation that have been dealt with. This is only important because you absolutely hate it. A critical part of the legislative process on any bill which affects devolved competences is that the Scottish Parliament and National Assembly for Wales are invited to provide legislative consent. This is clearly the case with the withdrawal agreement bill. This obviously requires detailed analysis and scrutiny of what we understand will be a lengthy and complex piece of legislation, which has only been sent to us in the last 24 hours. The concern that Parliament could not in any way adequately undertake the scrutiny of the bill in a 10-day period as required in the absence of an extension lay behind the decisions of the House of Commons to withhold its approval of the withdrawal agreement unless and until the implementing legislation is passed. This is a concern we fully share. It is simply impossible for us to fulfil our constitutional responsibilities in this timescale. Why is that then? You just don't do anything else and you get paid 80 odd grand a year plus 200 grand expenses. Why can't you do it in 10 days? You add 3 years, which is dictated by the way in which the Prime Minister delayed table informal proposals. An extension would allow us to adequately scrutinise the agreement and the draft legislation in accordance with our constitutional responsibilities. While clearly it is a matter for the Council to consider how long such an extension should be, we would favour one which is long enough to enable a referendum with Remain on the ballot paper to be held in the UK. I'm sorry, I've said it in previous videos. Remain holds no weight, it can have no legitimacy on any future referendum, it's lost already, there is no way back for it. If something loses a referendum, it cannot be in a future referendum. You want a referendum, it's deal or no deal, end of story. They're the only options you can have and even that doesn't hold much weight. People have voted, you deliver. No deal if necessary, a deal if you can get one everyone's happy with, which, let's be honest, you can't. So you should just leave with no deal, end of story. You don't have to have a deal to leave the EU. This is something that Maybot decided, and the government then. This is not something we actually need. Both of our governments and legislators are in favour of such a referendum and of the UK remaining in the EU. Well, guess what? It doesn't matter what your governments or your legislators think or are in favour of. The UK as a whole voted to leave. Like I've said before, more people in Scotland voted to leave then voted for the SNP by like 100,000 or something. So leaving the EU has more of a mandate in Scotland than you do. So pipe down. We would like to take this opportunity to express our sincere thanks for your consistent efforts to ensure the option of the UK remaining in the EU is not closed off on the EU side. Doesn't matter what the EU are doing, it's closed off on this side. End of story. There will be riots like you have never seen if they tried to remain in the EU. So I can't imagine any government would try and pull that. We are copying this letter to the President of the European Parliament, the President of the European Commission, the European Union's Chief Negotiator and the European Parliament's Brexit Coordinator. We are also sending a copy to the Prime Minister and leaders of the political parties within the House of Commons. Signed, Traitor 1 and Traitor 2. Now I don't know who these people think they are and what right they think they have to interfere in government's negotiations. Yes, they may be the puppet governments of Scotland and Wales, but Scotland and Wales are part of the United Kingdom and they are under the banner of the United Kingdom at the end of the day. We voted as a country to leave, that includes Scotland and Wales. At the end of the day, you're all part of it. This should be collusion with a foreign power, or what the Tory party are talking about now in prosecuting anyone who interferes in international negotiations with the government and a foreign power. So there it is, like I said, at the end of the day, the collusion is not over. These traitors will continue until the very last breath and probably afterwards. I've said it many times, once we've left the EU, whether it be with a deal or without a deal, this won't be over. These people are going to keep on coming. It won't end there. But anyway guys, I will end the video there on that note. I want to thank the channel's PayPal, Patreon and Subscribe members for supporting the channel, along with everyone who watches my videos. Remember to let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Leave a like, subscribe with the notification bell and share this video as it helps the channel a lot. And I will see you all in the next one.
Parliament is a dead parliament. It should no longer sit. It has no moral right to sit on these green benches. They don't like the truth. Twice they have been asked to let the electorate decide upon whether they should continue to sit in their seats, while they block 17.4 million people's votes. This Parliament is a disgrace. But they're too cowardly to give it a go. But the time is coming. The time is coming, Mr. Speaker, when even these turkeys won't be able to prevent Christmas.
Pattern consistent throughout history of oppressed people turning on the oppressors, slaves against their owners, the peasantry against the feudal barons, colonies, Mr. Verhofstadt, against their empires. And that is why Britain is leaving. And it doesn't matter which language you use, we are going and we are glad to be going. We're off.